So I'd like to start out this evening. Last week we received some exciting news that I'd like to share with you. Back in 2011, we started a sister company. It was actually a DBA. It was the commercial division of Bland Solar. And it was the reason we started that company. We started doing some larger ag work, some larger commercial work. And that progressed into another company. In 2012, we had to separate that DBA as a sister company called Calcom Solar. And last week we found out that Calcom Solar was number 3 in the United States in Inc. 500, third fastest growing company in the United States. So I'd like to share that with you, and I would also like to thank you because we couldn't do that without the support of the community. We've been in business here in October, will be 31 years, and that's because of we do good work. We've been part of the community for a long time, but it's because of the support that we've received from you and the support that we receive that I receive from my family. And I want to brag on my team a little bit. From sales to operations, admin, every part of my company, I just feel like the most fortunate guy in the world. I have the best team in the industry. I firmly believe that, and I thank you guys for that. There's a lot more that goes in the solar project than just the actual installation of the job. That's the easy part. Installing the job is the easy part. That takes a day or two. It's the work on the front end and the back end that really puts the project together in a quality project. First of all, it's answering all of the customers' questions to make sure that you are well informed before you make a decision on who you're going to go with your investment. The next step would be designing the system. We have some of the finest engineers in the industry working for our companies. The third part in the process is the actual installation. And I think arguably, or at least as important as anything else, is the customer follow-up and the monitoring of your system once it's in. Because we want to make sure that you're maximizing your investment for the life of the system. Okay? So what I'd like to do next, I'd like to go through a slide presentation. I'd like to show you what's happening with PG&E right now. I use PG&E by name because that's who most of us buy our power from. If you live on the outskirts, it might be Southern Cal Edison. Generically, I might say utility, but I'm referring to PG&E. Show you what's happening with that right now, what you're charged for, and how solar can offset that, and show you exactly what you're getting if you invest in purchasing a system. So the latest thing the utility company has done, they've gone from a 4-tier system to a 3-tier system. And and on the surface that may look like a good thing. It's like, hey, they're simplifying things for us. They're making this process a little easier to understand. But actually, let's say you'll end up paying more with a 3-tier system than if they had stayed with the old 4-tier system. So you're charged when you gas up your vehicle, you're getting charged by the gallon of gas. What units are you being charged for when you buy electricity? Most of us just open up the bill, we see a dollar amount, we write a check for it, or we go online and we do the online pay, and we forget about it until next month. You're charged by the kilowatt hour. Just real quickly, I'll describe what a kilowatt hour is. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts. 1,000 watt hour, a kilowatt hour. If you have, everybody's pretty familiar with a 100 watt light bulb. If you have 10 of those, that's 1,000 watts, right? 10 100 watt light bulbs, if you leave those on for 1 hour, that's a kilowatt hour. So that's an easy way to understand the units that you're being charged for. An air conditioner, by the way, that's a lot of kilowatt hours. So the new rate structure, the baseline rate is 18 cents a kilowatt hour, and they'll allocate somewhere between 300 and 500 kilowatt hours as your baseline rate. Well, that doesn't last very long. If you turn the lights on in your house, you're gonna go over that fairly quickly. And then you go, after that, you go to tier 2, which is 24 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's 100% over that. So if you had 500 kilowatt hours as your base, you get another 500 kilowatt hours. You know, it's all based on volume, and that would be at 24 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, when you go over that, it starts getting pretty serious. It goes to 40 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, I can tell you, anybody that lives in a hot zone like Bakersfield, that gets up 100 degrees, you know, plus in the summertime, you're well into the tier 3. As a matter of fact, most of your kilowatt hours are tier 3. So breaking down the math a little farther, the average customer or typical Kern County user is around 1,000 kilowatt hours per month, okay? Or 12,000 kilowatt hours per year. Here's how it breaks down. Your tier or your baseline rate, tier 1, $74. Your next allocation into tier 2 is $97. And this one just goes, if you notice, 194 kilowatt hours, that's just slightly over, but just slightly over into tier 3, that's another $78 for a total of $249 per month. Go back one slide. Oh no, I'm sorry, go for it. There you go. So now we take a look at what we're paying the utilities. And keep in mind, you don't get anything back for this other than you get to turn things on like lights, and you get to run air conditioners and the pool pump and the refrigerator, freezer. You're not going to see any of this money return you if you just keep paying the utilities. So over $3,000, $3,000 a year over 25 years, that's $74,700. And the reason I use 25 years is because that's a nice comparison. A solar system, when you purchase a solar system, is guaranteed, kind of like a bumper-to-bumper warranty for 25 years. Now, there's one thing I am leaving out of this, just to keep the math pretty simple. In 25 years, I'm not adding in any utility rate hikes. What do you think the chances are of utility rates staying flat for 25 years? So I'm showing you best case about $75,000 that you'll spend over 25 years. Now, what can you do about it? An 8 kilowatt system will produce 100% of that power. So you can offset that power that you're purchasing from the utilities and again, we use 25 years, that's just the warranty. They don't just stop producing in 25 years. Solar panels will continue to produce. They have a 40-year life expectancy. The power production it will kind of drop off, but we're sticking with 25 years just to under promise and over deliver. So what does that look like in dollars and cents? An 8 kilowatt system, the gross price of that, this is before the federal incentive, the 30% federal income tax credit. That's a dollar for dollar income tax credit. After your gross cost of $27,200, there's a tax credit of just over $8,000. So your investment to offset $75,000 worth of cost for power, your investment, you basically, you can change that out for a $19,000 investment. So if you go to the next slide here. If you do the math on that, think back to that first slide where we showed the pricing on the tiers of power. Baseline or tier 1 was 18 cents a kilowatt hour. That is your lowest kilowatt hour price. Most of them are over 40, around 40 cents a kilowatt hour. So it averages out to where you're in the high 20s. So when you buy a solar system, you're literally pre-purchasing your power for 6 cents a kilowatt hour. It's just the way the math works out. That's why you can't, you drive through the valley here, the San Joaquin Valley from, actually it's outside of that, but the San Joaquin Valley is #1 per capita in solar installations in the world. And, some of the reasons for that, we have ample sunshine, so we have high production. We also have the 3rd highest utility rate from PG&E or Southern Cal Edison, either one. 3rd highest in the United States, next to Hawaii and Maine. So the payoff is big. That's why it's you can't drive through the valley without seeing solar panels going in everywhere. Next slide. Next slide. So my analogy on pricing, it would be, I'd like to finish, it's not the end of the presentation, but for this part of it, I like to point out, a good analogy here. If somebody were to approach you and say, how do you like to pre-purchase 25 years worth of fuel for your vehicle at 81 cents a gallon? And it's actually better than that because we're basing that on 18 cents per kilowatt hour. It's a fantastic investment. Okay. Any questions on the presentation so far before I get into purchase versus lease? Okay. Without going in this line for line and boring, I just want to go hit some of the bullet points on leasing versus purchasing. We have always been, as a company, we have always been pro-purchase, anti-lease. We have a lease product. We've carried lease products before. There are rare circumstances when a lease may be better than staying on the utilities, with the utilities, but it's rare. 99% of the time, you're better off buying your system than leasing the system. #1 reason I like to start out with, when you lease a solar electric system, it's a 20-year commitment. It clouds the title on your property for 20 years. And if you add up 20 years worth of lease payments, and by the way, you still have a small utility bill because the system you lease is not going to do 100% of your power. But if you add up those lease payments for 20 years, it's 3 times what I showed you to purchase this. So the $19,000 investment to offset $75,000, that actually, you can multiply that times 3. So you would still, really, after the small utility bill that you would still have on top of your lease payment, really the only thing that happens when you lease a system is you can say, yeah, I have solar on my house. I guess if it's a status thing, then there's some value there. The rare instance in where a lease may make sense is if you have no federal tax liability, and so you can't take advantage of the tax credit, and for some reason you don't qualify for a loan. Maybe leasing a system is an option to the utilities, but the investment value is just simply not there. Another thing on a lease that's in the small print, there's usually an escalator built into the lease payment, which is typically 2.9. I'll just round it out and say 3%. So every year, your lease payment will be increased by 3%. And I guess back, 8 or 10 years ago, when these Wall Street investors got together and they said, hey, let's bundle some money, and what can we do to increase the value of these leases? They said, well, hey, utility prices typically go up. We can show a 20-year average where utility rates go up about 6% a year. Why don't we just cut that in half and we'll raise our lease payments 3% a year? So to me, that's just another injustice to the customer. So if you really want what's best for you in the long run, buying your system is best, in our opinion. We'll try to talk you out of a lease if you come in here to make comparisons. We'll do our very best to talk you out of it. With a purchase, in closing out, and like then we'll answer. We have lots of folks here that can answer questions, but something that's readily available today that wasn't so readily available just even 5-6 years ago is financing. Credit unions, banks, specific finance companies. We have Brian McCarty here this evening with the HERO program. That's a property assessed clean energy, or they call it PACE financing, where you can actually finance the purchase of a system by assessing your property tax, assessing the payment to your property tax, which has even other tax benefits associated with it. We have Employees Education Credit Union. We have SunGage Financial. There's all kinds of options out there. And actually, and you also have the option of doing a home equity loan. So there, 10 years ago, we had to rely on cash paying customers. So you can imagine now with all the finance options, that's really opened up the field to everybody. Everybody can afford solar now. You may have noticed in the showroom this evening we have our new air conditioning display. We also have a philosophy here. Before we size a solar electric system for your property, we want to take a look at your house or take a look at the building envelope and see how we can maximize efficiency or reduce. You may be buying more energy than you have to before you put solar on. So we take a look at things like the efficiency of your air conditioning. Do you have insulation in your attic? You may have single pane windows. There are all kinds of things that may be affecting the use of your electricity usage. So why not address that first, then size the system? Typically what happens, we can save the customer a lot of money by simply making those recommendations. And then if they still want to go solar, it's rather than installing an 8 kilowatt system, we may have reduced the need down to a 5 kilowatt system. So we've even saved them more money and just get a better result moving on, moving forward with their investment. I forgot one thing. If by chance, if you were interested in solar, this is not like you have to do this tonight. We're going to run a special through the end of September. You'll get a $1,000 American Express gift card if you sign within the next month. Thank you.